Salam and welcome to SomaliDispatch.com's Dispatches program and to our YouTube channel. I am Abdul Qadir Goulet. This week in Somaliland, the Human Rights Center has released its quarterly report on human rights violations in 2022. The report gives troubling details of authoritarian tendencies and judicial malpractice in Somaliland. The report covers the first quarter of 2022. To discuss the report and the human rights conditions in Somaliland, we reached out to the chairperson of the Human Rights Center, Yasmin Omar H, Mohamoud, and I began our conversation by asking her to give us an overview of what the center does.
Thank you so much, Abdul Goulet. The Human Rights Center is a local organization based on Somaliland's headquarters Hargeisa, Somaliland. It's created in 2018. So they exist in almost in 9 years and above. So the center work is for human rights violations that daily happen happening in Somaliland regions. All Somaliland regions also have different staff based on the different regions of the country. That's also the center work is 3 areas. For example, reporting, documentation, and publishing the violations that daily happen in the country. So that's the 3 main areas that the center work is.
Excellent. So this year, you've released last week or the beginning of this week, the report for the first quarter of the year, 2022. What were the highlights of those? If you can give us an overview, would be great.
The center releases its quarterly report. The quarterly report is a part of the other report is that the center always releases. So it's basically about the human rights violations happening in the country from January to May. It including we recorded 53 detentions. Which related to, for example, freedom of expression and other arrests, illegal wrongful arrests. So it's basically about the violations and the situation of human rights in Somaliland.
Excellent. The report is also on our website, SomaliDispatch.com, and it's also on the organization's website. Feel free to browse and read and get the details. But Yasmin, as usual, the report focuses on Somaliland's government's violations of freedom of expression laws. This report is no different. Why do you think that is, given the constitutional rights citizens have to speak their minds?
Thank you. Usually, the center focuses on the daily incidents happening in Somaliland. For example, human rights violations. The violations that against the Constitution of Somaliland and the other laws, international laws, which Somaliland Constitution agreeing. So this is related to violations happening in the country. So yes, the center always, since the center usually releases its reports. The reports marks how the level of for example, violations that happening in the country. So the difference is that the increasing rate of arrests, for example, since the center exists, the rate of increasing, the number of arrests is increasing daily. As a daily, so it's from whether the issue is different. Where we focus on that is a violation or not, or is that arrests or detentions against the Constitution of Somaliland. So we focusing on how this violation is going on, or what is the, for example, responses of the government in Somaliland, and how the level of irrespective of the Constitution of Somaliland. For example, the government always arrests people without basic laws or without the reasonable ground. then maybe they release it and later without reasonable ground also. So this is indefinite detentions, and the indefinite detention is repetitive detentions in here. So that's what we always focusing on what is we talking about and we reporting to, and we write something about that. So the difference, the level of arrest and the numbering that always increasing. Like
right. Journalists in Somaliland are arrested and are arraigned on a regular basis under frivolous charges. Tell us about one or two of these extreme cases in the report from your center.
Yeah, the center recorded 30 journalists, especially we recorded 17 journalists that arrested 13. Most of them released, but two of them have been sentenced in 16 months. That people, two journalists were Mohamed Abdi Sheikh Ilik and Abdi Jabbar Mohamed Hussein. We see that judgment is illegal and it's not based on background of law. For example, when they arrest and detain, they doing their part of work. So the criminalization of media is against the law of the country and the Somaliland press law. Although the challenge existing here at the side of journalists is penal code and the laws existing in the country. For example, Somaliland has a constitution, and the constitution is the sovereign law of the country. While we usually the journalists, when they get arrested, they banish it to the penal code, and the penal code is outdated laws, while the constitution of the Somaliland is an updated one, and it's guaranteeing the rights of journalists according to Article 32, for example. It said that you can say something about what you wanted to say in freely way, or the journalism is a fundamental part of the fundamental human rights, of fundamental rights of the. So that is the main issue of journalism here. On the other hand, there is the quarter part of including arrest of the Djiboutian citizen called Are Suleiman Aulet Are, which is a Djiboutian citizen but living in here, Somaliland. His arrest and detention is against the laws of the Somaliland against constitution. For example, he said that you criticize something or you say something related to against to president of Djibouti, and this country is a, for example, another country. So this is the controversial, for example, issue, and the confuses from the what the constitution guaranteeing for the Somaliland is what the people living in here, or what the response, for example, the actions of the government against the Somaliland constitution. So this is the main areas that the report focuses on.
Most of these cases, if are resolved with the arrest of journalists, politicians, and other citizens are usually released without a charge. How and why do you think that is? That they could, the government could just arrest someone without laying charges or, finding them to be guilty, but then as a resolution, they're always just released and nothing happens after that. Why do you think that is?
Basically, and truly speaking, that's Somaliland government arrest people without reasonable ground or without due process flow, or a proper procedure, for example. So they arrest people and then they release. Maybe they release later without another reasonable ground. So this is the problem. If you arrest, for example, they do not arrest the people without with warrant. So they arrest without warrant. And then maybe there is another challenge in the courts or justice sectors. For example, many people faces unfair trial. For example, there's no fair trial rights. There is no spirit of trial in the court. So many cases delayed in the police stations. So there is a money problem related to that, and there's overcrowded prisoners detained in centers. So we are very sorry, or that because of that, the wrongful actions which the government repeatedly doing, and that's not good for Somaliland, and this is not good issue, for example.
Right. The cases that are highlighted in the report, Human Rights Center in Somaliland, the quarterly report, seems to be making mockery of Somaliland's democracy and judicial system. And it's always frustrating to those who advocate, like yourselves, for citizens. In the report, it highlights the arbitrary detentions of mothers, for example, with children in Gibile. What's their story? What can you tell us about that story?
25 May, and on 25 May in this year, there is 8 mothers who arrested for because of their child or their children doing some wrongful things. They're arrested behind that issue, but there's a wrongful intentions that always and usually the government doing. For example, this is a cultural issue. For example, they say this is the only way that we have to arrest the perpetrators, but this is not good for the justice. The Constitution of Somaliland, Article 26, for example, sub 2 is stating that only the crime, the criminal capacity, for example, is only for the one who is committed. So this is against the law, against international human rights laws. So it's not the only time that those women or those people met that arrest, but this is usually happening in the country, and that's another wrongful things.
So for me and the audience is to understand, someone in those women's family, their family members, one of their family members committed a crime, and the government arrested them because they couldn't find the perpetrators. Is that the logic of them arresting these women with children in Gabile?
No, this against the common sense. For example, they arrested for that issue. Your children or your maybe your relatives doing a wrongful thing, and maybe they arrested something. Then you have to arrest and detain it, and you have to the detention centers. Then that's absolutely wrong at the eyes of justice. For example, because the criminal liabilities is only about the one who committed already. So this is against the justice, and this is not what we can accept as a city. Yeah.
As we all know, Yasmin Omar H, Mohamoud, as the head of HRC in Hargeisa, Somaliland. Somaliland has gained a relative peace and made some democratic gains, but after 31 years is unable, and some would say unwilling, in following its own judicial drafted laws. Why do you think that is?
Still, there is challenge reform of laws. We know that Somaliland is a days of people and days of Somaliland people and the other international community. Somaliland is a democratic country, but there is no absolute democracy in here. When you see at the side of elections, you can say yes, this country is a democratic country at the side of one man, one vote, for example. But at the side of justice and the laws that may be laws and regulations that about under the citizens, for example, the rights of which may be apply the rights of the citizens. It's absolutely broken, and this is not good for the democracy that Somaliland claim. So, for example, there's no there's a gap related to many laws in here. For example, there is no laws related to police brutality, or there is no law related to issue abuses related to, for example, sexual abuses. For example, there is no exact law and exact act. Another issue is still the issue may be related to Somaliland Bureau's laws is still stacking in here, although Somaliland have a new parliament in here. So there's a broken law and lack of laws in Somaliland. So this is the how or the contradiction in here.
Yeah. Now, the work that the center does beyond assisting victims, compiling and archiving violations and making recommendations, is there any hope that the current or future governments of Somaliland may actually follow the law in preserving citizens' rights?
Yeah, although there's many challenges relating guys of at the side of laws in here and the practices of the government, there's many challenges surrounding to that. But we hope that change may be happen, and we have a hope to get a better justice in here, and that's what we need as a citizens, as other people
Right.
we work.
Right. And finally, people who are watching this and are or reading the HRC's annual and quarterly reports may be shocked to find out that Somaliland's claim to be democratic and progressive, albeit not recognized, is facing major challenges. Would that conclusion be fair?
Maybe I am suggesting that issue, for example, Somaliland claiming democracy, for example, and they seeking recognition. So in order to get that issue at the right time, we have to make a change, for example, related to justice sectors and people who maybe people who always face the challenges and difficulties times. For example, there is a social problems, economic problems, and we now we are talking about justice issue problems. So if we wanted to change, and if Somaliland wanted to recognize, it had to be make better and make good in the interior issue, for example. While we have to seek recognition, we need to change our barriers lying in here.
Yasmin Omar H, Mohamoud, the head of HRC, I thank you immensely for your time and explaining the report to our audiences. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.